I'm going to call to order this regular meeting of the Public Safety, Civil Rights, and Emergency Management Committee meeting. Today is August 20th, 2014. I'm Councilmember Blong Yang, Chair of the committee. With me today are Council Members Palmisano, Councilmember Gordon, and Council President Barb Johnson. Today we have 5 items on the agenda, one of which is a discussion item, and I'm going to read that discussion item really quickly before we go to the consent items. The discussion item is an item to accept a single bid for uniforms unlimited for an estimated annual expenditure in the amount of $130,000 for conducted energy device tasers to the Minneapolis PD. So we will hold that for discussion in a little while. We're going to take care of the consent items really quickly, if we can. The items for consent, there are 4 items. One is from the fire department, and that is to accept a Minnesota Board of Fire Training and Education redistribution funding under the Round 6 Training Reimbursement Program in the amount of $48,960 for the MBFTE approved training conducted between July 1st, 2013 and June 30th, 2014, and to approve the budget appropriation. Item 2 is from the Office of Emergency Management. That's to authorize the acceptance of the 2014 Emergency Management Performance Grant Award in the amount of $30,000 and to approve budget appropriation. The 3rd and 4th items are from the MPD. The first item is to approve the issuance of a new request for proposals for City of Minneapolis Police, Fire, and Minneapolis Park Board Police Department's Health Club memberships, fitness and wellness services, and facility use. The second item is to authorize contract with the University of Minnesota in the amount of $20,200 for Minneapolis Police to provide bomb unit and K-9 unit security at football games at TCF Bank Stadium. Council members, anyone with any questions or anyone wishing to pull any item off? Hearing none, Council President Johnson.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just would like to ask a question on the health club memberships, and maybe Chief Glampy could answer. Just a curiosity, what sort of fitness standards do we have for people ongoing?
Committee Chair, Council President, currently those are all contractual issues that we have to have the agreement of the Federation in order to have fitness testing. And so that's going to come up in the collective bargaining agreement that expires in December. The current language is archaic in that it goes back to the mid-2000s when we offered stress tests in lieu of a run, and there's a lot of extra costs that would be generated in that. So as we sit today, we have no fitness standards ongoing for department members. What we did do, however, is we created a standard of attendance if you're going to have a health club membership that's paid for by the city, either through the current vendor, Lifetime Fitness, or an alternative club where you have to attend a certain number of times per month in order to continue the city paying for that.
I see. Okay. So is that on our agenda then in the collective bargaining process for the next contract?
I certainly can't speak for the chief's agenda overall, but that's one that's I've got checked off on mine because we want to continue that fitness testing, or at least certainly look at going forward with it in a manner that's I guess equitable, both from a cost wise and from a performance standpoint, and it's going to produce the results we're looking for.
Okay. Thank you.
Council members, any other questions or anyone want to pull an item off for discussion? Okay, hearing none, I will move for approval of all consent items. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? All right, motion carries. The discussion item today is the tasers, and DC Glampy, do you want to start that discussion?
Thank you, Committee Chair Yang. At this time, I'd like to introduce Officer Jeff Johnson to the committee. Officer Johnson is a 5th Precinct officer who was our most previous TASER coordinator for the police department. Our current TASER coordinator is out of the city of St. Paul at training today. And so I've asked Officer Johnson to be here with me today just in case there's any questions that we might need to answer, because he certainly would be one of our experts on the department. As a way of introducing what we're here to talk about today, we have approximately 300 tasers in use by the police department. Those tasers do have a perishable shelf life. Taser International, who is our provider and is I think the only provider of these devices, they advertise a shelf life of being 5 years. We started the program in 2001. We went through a replacement phase in 2004 and 2005, and we just most recently started this again. So we've got a lot of tasers, the majority of these devices that are pushing 10 years, and we're very fortunate to have doubled the shelf life that's advertised. So as a way to make sure we are maintaining officer safety and we're keeping the equipment up to date, we're going to try and, on a yearly basis, bring forward a rotation so we can swap out the old and get the new ones in. So rather than going, having 15-year-old tasers, hopefully by that point we have gotten to everybody on a rotating basis of 50 a year, and we have new tasers into the hands of our officers. The other thing I want to point out is, along with the taser itself, there are extras that need to be purchased, as you could see in the order. We do have to have a new holster. There's different cartridges, different batteries. It's like a lot of other electronic devices. I liken it to the iPhone. Here's a new iPhone. Oh, by the way, you have to have a new cord to charge it. So it's not as simple as just getting the new device and using the old accessories. There are some additional costs. And one error I would point out on the proposal sheet, and we actually called Uniforms Unlimited just before we came up. It says it's a $380 extended warranty per year. That is incorrect. It's for 4 years, and we verified that through Uniforms Unlimited. So I thought that was excessive per year to have a third of the cost as an extended warranty, but it's not. It's for 4 years. So if I could just point out that error in the proposal sheet.
All right. Council President Johnson. Councilmember Gordon.
So we're not actually increasing the number of tasers that we'll have in operation. We're just trying to keep up with the 300 that are currently in use. Is that correct?
Committee Chair, Councilmember Gordon, that's correct. At this time, there's no request to increase that number. Our main focus, the priority we have, is making sure, first of all, our crisis intervention team officers who work patrol have tasers. They all do. Secondly, all our crisis intervention team members, so if they're in investigations or not specifically on patrol, they all have tasers, which they do. From there, we make sure that anybody on patrol who wants one has it, and then any other people with the leftovers. So at this point, no, we're not looking to increase. We're just looking to maintain what we have.
And is that number 300?
I apologize for not having the specific number. I believe it's 278, and that fluctuates on any given, if we lose somebody to retirement and they give theirs up, it could be down, but 278 was the last number, I believe. And then we have extra tasers for our trainers. At any given time, we have 10 that are broken down and need to be repaired, so we swap them out for the broken tasers. So approximate number 300 is a really good number we were able to use. So, and I think, but the actual number on the street with our officers is like 278.
And they actually cost $1,000 each?
Yes. The 900, and I think it's the old sales number of $999. $999.95 is what they cost. We did also note that there is We checked Taser before we came up today, and we get $65 for the old ones. We trade them in, Taser for Taser, and they give us $65 back. I'm not sure if this $9.99 number reflects that. I'm guessing based on that number, it doesn't, and we will get a credit on that, but that's something certainly we could check on to double check where that $65, if it's included or if it will be coming back to us.
Okay, and it also looks like it wasn't all that competitive because we only got one respondent to our bid.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's one of those single source vendors where Taser controls who bids it out, and their Minnesota market share, it's a lot like our weapons, where you only get usually like a Strikers who does the firearms. You only get a single vendor, so we are. Uniforms is it as far as what we're allowed to purchase from, because you can't buy right from Taser. You have to go through their authorized vendor.
I also have some questions about the Taser use. I know when we first were deploying more Tasers, and they were being marketed to us more, and they were becoming more popular as a use of force that wasn't as maybe potentially harmful as some, and this was an alternative, and there was some controversy about how will they be used, what's the policy, and so I'm curious about figuring out how often they're used, how often they were complying with the policy. I know there's been at least one, I think, high-profile case where one person was tased by several officers simultaneously. And there was a settlement about that. Have we got? I also understand that the tasers are supposed to actually have video that are operating. They have a memory chip, so we know when they've been deployed, what's the voltage, and all of that information. Do we have access to a report that could kind of give me a picture of how many tasers have been employed or deployed, whatever the correct term is? And I'm not sure we've had a good report on this for a few years, and I couldn't find much information.
Committee Chair, Councilmember Gordon, simple answer, yes to all your questions, but I'm more than happy to go into detail. Each time a taser is deployed, it has to be downloaded, the taser has to be downloaded. Each time the deployment occurs, that download captures that. So even if I test my taser today to make sure the battery's functioning, that will come up when it's downloaded. So each and every operation is captured, and that is captured by taser, by the actual weapon itself, which corresponds to the officer. So we can print out and we can tell how many times, when, time, duration, number of cycles for any given officer, and then obviously for the department as a whole. We can get that specific. The newer tasers coming out, now all of the new ones have cameras. The video isn't the greatest, but it's better than nothing, and it's actually a very good tool because it captures both audio and video. Unfortunately, the taser itself, the front end is only about that big. The video, like I say, the video, it's not a nice size like a squad video or a body camera, but it certainly is. It's a tool we can use. As far as deployments go, I can give you some real quick numbers now, and certainly we can get you anything in paper you want. But I can tell you that in 2011, we had 225 reported uses of the taser. In 2012, that number went down to 154. And last year, we had 91 deployments. So over the course of 3 years, that number has dropped, and that's actually going in and manually confirming via reports the number of times. A little bit more, less detailed report is to look at our cappers reports. In 2008, we had 429 reports of taser use. Last year, we were down to 115. I checked today, year to date, we're at 84, which, if it continues at the same pace, I did the math, will actually be a couple short of last year's mark of 115. So as you can see, no matter what number you use, it's going down dramatically. And I asked Officer Johnson, why is that? What have we changed? And we believe it's the public's perception. we've had, approximately 13 years of use. Nationally, they've become a very well-known police tool. And quite honestly, our officers have taken a lot of ownership and responsibility and have been held accountable for their use. So there's no one factor that leads us to why these things have gone down in use. The other thing is we've also seen our officers use these as a warning tool. When you tell somebody, I'm going to tase you, and they see the red dots from the laser come out, a lot of stuff stops right there. And we've noticed those numbers increasing where a simple warning and presence stops the behavior without us having to go that step further. So those aren't always captured in those numbers. These are actual deployments where we pull a taser out and use it on somebody. Those numbers don't include, I pull my taser out and say, I'm going to tase you, and we call it red dotting when the laser dots go on a person. So the numbers have definitely gone down in use. One other number I'd like to give to you that's very important to us. In 2012, of the 154 deployments, 24 were on suicide calls or crisis intervention calls. 2011, that number was 17. Last year, that number was up to 27. So while we're seeing a decrease in the actual use overall, we're seeing an increase in the number of times these are used on crisis intervention calls or suicide attempts. So I think that speaks to how these are really being used in a positive manner, if you could say that about a use of force. I think this is a great example of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it looks like you're reading from some written reports. So if I could just get a PDF, it might be interesting. I mean, I'd be interested to get to look through some of those numbers myself later.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to share that with the entire committee. I think it's important that you have this information. We've got it broken down by even precinct. They do take a little while to pull, so we don't have this year's data yet, but I certainly think you'll be impressed to see the previous year's data by precinct, by quarter. Absolutely. I've got that sitting on my computer. You'll have it as soon as this meeting's over.
And so a couple more questions. One is, when a taser has been used, is that reviewed then by other officers or by a supervisor? So much as if somebody I know uses their gun, that's definitely reviewed and everybody looks at that. Is the taser use reviewed by any supervisors or anybody?
It's actually reviewed threefold. First review is done at the scene. It requires a supervisor to come out to the scene and review the use, just like we would if we used a punch or any other reportable force. You go out, you take pictures of any injury, you talk to the person, you get an idea of what led to the use, you talk to the officer. Then it's reviewed by internal affairs, an independent force review, just the same as we would with the exact other use of force I gave. The third review happens by the person in Officer Johnson, or now Sergeant Young's spot, as the taser coordinator. They go through, when they look at the downloads in the video, to assure yet a third time that this was used properly, or maybe it was used properly, but from a training perspective, these are some things we can take from this incident that happened as we go through our yearly training, which all our taser officers are required to go through annual recertification. So yeah, it gets an added level of review that most uses of force might not get, with that taser coordinator review being the third one.
Well, I appreciate that. I know that early on we would get some, I would hear about some complaints or some stories about where it looked like the taser was used just to get compliance. It wasn't necessarily as a substitute to a deadly force or some other force that would be more serious than the taser. It sounds like maybe some of the reductions are a change in that pattern, where people aren't using it just to get compliance. They're willing to talk a little more or use some other techniques to get somebody to get up or get in the car. Do you think there's changes in that area?
I would agree with that, absolutely, and it's because we've had a professional like Officer Johnson in there who oversees it, and that is a key component of the training. The other thing is the courts have been pretty loud on what you can use a taser for. For instance, if you pull the trigger once and then you're going to induce another cycle, you have to be able to give justification for not only the first cycle, but independent justification for the second one. So the courts have been pretty loud about that, and we have too, to our officers, saying these are the rules of the game, and that it is a high level of force, and you have to justify that high level of force. So I think it is a conscious decision by our officers that over the years, and you see it in the numbers, over the years, they've come to know this. This is a high level of force. It's not to be used on a casual basis, which I'm not saying it was before, but certainly I think there's a lot more conscious thought officers using these. And along with the public having knowledge, the public also has knowledge. They see it, and you better be using it in the proper way, because if you're not, we know the public's going to be there to call us out on it. So I think the officers have done a really good job in making sure the taser use is proper. And the other thing I could say is, coming from internal affairs, we did not see, and this is just coming from the top of my head, I have no empirical data, we could certainly get that as well, but there's not a lot of taser misuse cases I saw over the last 3 to 5 years. I don't know prior to my being in there in 2009. So again, it kind of shows on the back end that when we use it, we're doing a pretty good job of making those decisions.
Well, that was another thing I wanted to ask about, is complaints related to taser use. I was kind of indicating anecdotally, and in the newspapers, I hadn't seen much in the last couple of years.
Right.
But I was wondering, so if you can get those numbers, that might be good to see how many complaints about taser use. Has it gone up? Has it gone down? Has it been flat? You and I both seem to think maybe it's gone down a little, which would be great to get that verified, if possible, and if it isn't too much trouble. But I would love to see that. And I think we were also hoping it would reduce amount of deadly force that was used, and I don't know how we can measure that because it's probably difficult. But also, I think we're hoping it would reduce the number of injuries, either to officers or to citizens or others. Do we think that, and do we have any way that we're measuring reductions in injuries because of this?
No, I don't believe that we are. There's no checkbox that we can go to just say, give me that information. What it would take is us going through each report. So the empirical data, it's out there. We just have to be, it's going to take some sort of analyst to go through and properly pull it out so you're getting the right numbers. But again, from an anecdotal standpoint, if I could say that right, which I didn't, that information, I've saw it go down. We talked about the lawsuit, the deaths. We've had, I believe, only one death in the last how many years that was attributed to a taser. Quite honestly, most of the injuries that occurred are not the taser themselves. They're when people fall, when the barbs go in. It's not the taser acting against their body. So, and again, we're training our officers to be conscious. When you're going to tase somebody, make sure you're doing it in a spot, if at all possible, where they can fall safely. That's one of the first things you're taught. You don't tase somebody on a ledge, because when they fall, that's where the injury is going to occur. So I think, again, it's that consciousness of our officers of how they use these things and what the result is going to be. We're seeing the injuries go down to the extent that the injuries that occur are much more minor than what we may have saw at the beginning, where we were getting used to these things.
Maybe my last question for now is, do we have a record of who the taser has been used on? So if I wanted to find out, are we using it on minors ever? Has it been used on somebody who's pregnant or elderly people? Or what's the ratio of racial difference in who's being tased and isn't being tased? Do we collect that information, and could I get that?
We do. It's all sitting in the capper system. It's just a matter of pulling those reports and then pulling whatever data. So you'd have to pull the reports, you'd have to take the raw data and then pull out what you need. It's certainly something we could work on. We don't have it immediately, but I think it wouldn't take that much. We're only talking about 84 reports this year. That's certainly, I think if we could get specific in the data we're looking for, the differences maybe by age, race, sex, things like that, it wouldn't take long to just pull those reports and then pull that data out.
Well, I think that could be very interesting, and even if we did that annually or every few years, it would probably help us at least keep track of it and notice any trends that we might be worried about.
Absolutely.
All right, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you.
All right. Well, I have a few questions. DC Glampy, since we have Officer Johnson here, we want to give him some face time. So, Officer Johnson, if you want to step up, you in the past you've trained officers using tasers, and one of the, I don't know if it's an urban myth, but one of the things that people tell me about the use of tasers is that if you have a taser, you've been tased before. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that's a requirement, right?
It's not a mandatory requirement, but it's strongly encouraged that all of our operators and instructors be exposed to the devices.
Okay. And who, I guess, in the department gets to have a taser? I mean, from the top down, where are our officers who carry tasers?
Well, when the program first started that we had officers carrying devices, they were the crisis intervention team members. That program started in 2001, and the officers had to apply and be interviewed and selected for that program. After a time, the taser tool was decided that it was a great tool for police officers to carry, and the department went ahead and purchased some more and issued them to patrol officers. So it was the crisis intervention team patrol officers as well as regular patrol officers. Since then, we've maintained that program to where the CIT officers all carry them, as well as patrol officers that would like them. When I was the taser coordinator, the chief said we're going to set a limit on these numbers of these devices. We're not going to buy any more. We're not going to drop our numbers. We're going to try and maintain about 300 or so devices. And as people would move on to investigations, we would collect their tasers from them and then redistribute them to patrol cops. So these devices would be out on the street instead of sitting in someone's desk. And currently, we've maintained the devices for all of our CIT officers, as well as the patrol officers who wish to have them.
And let me ask you this, and you can answer it either way. What's the profile of an officer who, a patrol officer who wants to carry a taser, or the inverse, which would be, what's the profile of a person who doesn't want to carry a taser?
Sure, good question. The patrol officers who carry the devices are ones that maybe have typically used force in the past and other forms of force, like strikes and kicks and things like that. And they understand how this device is going to keep them safe, and it's going to reduce injuries to themselves. Also, a lot of younger officers are being exposed to these devices in the academy at Hennepin Tech or Minneapolis Community Technical College or things like that, Alexandria, where they're going for their law enforcement education. They get exposed to these devices there and see their benefits there. So when they come to our department, they may wish to have one as well.
And with regards to the training, how rigorous is this training program to get a taser?
I wouldn't say it's rigorous. It's the initial training is an 8-hour training day where they're given manufacturer's training as well as department policy training. Then they do some hands-on training where they do some firing drills, they do some scenarios, where they're observed by the master taser coordinator, or the taser coordinator, as well as other taser instructors. And I wouldn't say that it's rigorous, but they do have to pass written test at the end of the manufacturer's training, and then show proficiency with the use of the device and the downloading.
And is the training annual, or is it just a one-time training?
The initial training is a one-time, it's 8 hours, but then all of our operators go through a 4-hour recertification every year. So they retake a test and go through manufacturer's training again, and then go through department policy, and if they have any questions with downloading at that point, they can inquire about that.
Okay, and with regards to tasers, the recommended shelf life of a taser is about 5 years?
That's what Taser says, yeah.
Okay, and I mean, conceivably, we have tasers that are much older than 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's essentially what we're trying to do, is we're trying to replace our tasers that are old, just because.
Correct.
What happens when a taser gets too old?
Tasers can slow down. There are electronic components inside of there, and typically when they do start slowing down, we can noticed that with how they're functioning. We have our officers do daily spark tests on the devices. So once they start slowing down, that's a time when we need to troubleshoot the devices. So typically with troubleshooting, our initial step is to replace the battery. That's why we have batteries on our request. And sometimes that fixes the problem right away, sometimes it doesn't. If that device slows down too much and it basically stops working, then we have to shelf that device. We can't use it anymore.
Okay. And let's say for our old tasers, the ones that don't work anymore, can't work anymore, I mean, what do we do with those?
In the past, we had traded those into Taser International for some money back on new purchases or replacement costs. And right now, I think we've just kind of been waiting for this replacement process. So they're shelved. They're actually on a shelf waiting to be turned back in.
Okay. And thank you. DC Glamby, could I just ask this question real quick? With regards to this this bid for tasers, is this the first time we've asked for, I guess, a replenishing of our tasers, or have we done it in the past as well?
I think we did it last year, Officer Johnson. Do you know, last year it was brought to our attention for the first time. I don't know if we got it before last year's council for the first time through last year, but that would have been it. We have not looked for a refresh. And if I could add to that refresh, we're being told by Taser that in 5 years, they're going to stop making parts for this current older model. So that's another reason for us to get in front of it, so we're not all of a sudden having to replace 100 at a time, because at that point you can't get batteries, you can't get replacement cartridges, and by proxy now they are shelved. So I just also wanted to put that out there as a reason we're coming forward now and trying to get in front of it.
Okay, thank you. Council President Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Glampy, how many officers are crisis intervention training trained? 120?
It's right around 120, and that number went up by about 20. I want to say approximately 20 last year, and our goal is to keep increasing that number of officers.
Okay, and then did they receive initial training, and then did they get a refresh also?
Yes, so they go through a separate crisis intervention team training that's a week long, and that's their initial entry into the team. Mm-hmm. Then every year they have their own training, and then they go through the separate Taser training. So they have two separate components of that training.
Okay. I mean, this for those of you who are newer here, this program was developed with Hennepin County Crisis Intervention Center, and is quite a model across the country dealing with people with mental health issues. And so I'm pleased to hear I think it's important that we keep that uptick in people that are trained, because I assume some of our folks retire and move on. So thank you.
Councilmember Palmisano?
Thank you. This piggybacks on President Johnson's question. Thank you. This has been a really useful information session and education for me. My question is also in regards to mental health use. So based on the data you shared about use during suicide intervention calls, is it your opinion that tasers are an effective deterrent during these calls? And is the CIT or other carriers trained specifically in that kind of use?
So, Councilmember, it's hard to measure the deterrent value when these are, because certainly there's a lot of times the majority of times when our crisis intervention officers or just any patrol officer shows up at a call when somebody's in crisis and they don't use a taser. Those are the vast majority of the calls, and things go well. The ending is where we want it. Certainly, by the numbers increasing every year, and last year we were up to 27 documented uses in either a CIC call or a suicide call, I think that does suggest that, yes, they are a deterrent, because we've kept seeing those numbers go up. And I would have to assume that if it was serious enough that the officer chose to use their taser on such a call, I think it speaks to the seriousness of the call overall, and maybe it wasn't a deterrent in that case, but it certainly created the ending that we all wanted with the person being safe in the end. But I think more importantly is that, the number of times when those aren't used, when the taser isn't used, and yet our officers are able to, deal with the person and have that successful outcome due to the training they go through.
Thank you. I understand it's kind of a complicated question, and I appreciate your thoughts on it. Is that also part of the training that happens for use of tasers? Do you train specifically for examples that are these kinds of crisis intervention calls?
Absolutely, and it was such a call back in 2001 that started this whole program. So that absolutely is one of the foundations of the TASER program, and certainly without question the CIT program.
Thank you.
Council members, any other questions? All right, well, hearing none, I will move for approval of the final item. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. All right, we have no other businesses before this committee, so we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.